on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. I hope everybody out there is having themselves an amazing day. Some awesome Q posts have come out, and it's really a couple really neat things that are starting to happen. One, leaks are starting to be figured out. There's people out there that are leaking information, but not many people. It's like one or two at this point, and I think they're really starting to pin down where all the leaks are happening. So this is very, very key. Second, a lot of excellent information is being dumped for anons and a little bit of trickery, testery. We'll get into it. There's a lot of interesting things that are happening as information suddenly released and then suddenly you can't find it. So again, very interesting how this is all starting to play out. And one other huge point that's being brought up is the way there's been a shadow government, shadow presidency that was actually initiated right from the get-go. And there's evidence of that as well. The Anons are doing amazing work. I'm just here to report it. This is fantastic. Let's jump to where we left off with Q-Posts. 4152 is where we left off. All assets deploy. Win by any means necessary. It's obvious that's what's trying to happen. D-Party's death spiral. And they really are. They're running out of things to make up. They're running out of the distractions for the public. The truth is starting to show itself. Again, there's still a lot of people that don't see it happening, but those of us waking up, the many of us waking up, it's a very different story, and it's becoming quite obvious. If Hillary had won, you would never know what COVID-19 was. This is kind of a twofold thing. One, they probably never would have told us and just let us die, and it would have been worse. Two, wouldn't have needed to happen because the war with North Korea that would have probably gone nuclear would have occurred beforehand. So we wouldn't have needed to kill everybody with this pandemic, whatever. And of course, a lot of people are saying the wearing the mask and all this. You can read that yourself. Saying it out loud sometimes has repercussions. Post 4153, an interesting one. There's a lot of information in here, and I'm not going to cover all of it, right? Just right off the bat, you guys are like, oh, and you're glazing over, right? CrowdStrike testimony regarding DNC and Russian hack. These are some very interesting things. One, no direct evidence. No one got to actually look at the server other than the people at CrowdStrike. And I will be honest, my brother works for that company. And anyway, I've talked to him. I don't agree with them. They definitely believe what they're being told and what everyone else is saying. But no one else got to look at that server. Manipulation of the source? Possibly. Very possible, or was the hack done in such a way that it looked like another country, which they do all the time. All the time people hack and try to make it look like another country. They put weird code in there with unique nicknames that are a specific language, maybe that are very regional specific. They do it all the time. This is commonplace. So again, no big surprise there. But again, was there manipulation? Good chance. Comp-to-comp transfer speed hack? One of the big questions that they've talked about that this hack happened across the Atlantic Ocean. Not possible. The speeds that happen cannot go that fast. They did tests of the best connections they could get across the ocean, and they could not get that transfer rate speed that happened. The only way that probably could have happened was locally with a flash drive, a USB drive. One of them little thingies, right? Shove it in your pocket, walk out the door. And the other thing that kind of gets pushed out that's kind of interesting is this part right here. Interning for the DNC can be deadly. And I think everybody understands what that 187 is referring to, or at least Mr. Rich, really, really nice, wonderful man. There's a lot of information on this slide for Anons. So all you Anons, please check your Q post and look at this. There is a whole bunch of different stuff that they want you guys to go digging through. I am looking forward to seeing what craziness you pull up. You guys are amazing. You guys are magicians, man. It's pretty awesome. Shadow presidency. This is one of the things that a lot of people don't realize that happened, and there's being a lot of attention being brought to. Hussein, Barry, Obama, Barack, whatever you want to call him. He had some pre-post foreign travel that seemed to shadow the president of the United States. So interesting. And he follows up with this other post, Hussein's timeline, 1/20/17, so right at the start of it all, to today, which this post was 2018, so for a while. Cross against POTUS's schedule. Cross against the White House visitor log. These are public records, folks. This is the one thing that's going to nail the deep state. They are still kind of, I think, in old thinking because they do not realize the power of the internet. They think they can shut off the internets, but frankly, that kill switch, I think, has been dealt with. It's what we've been told, in that there are some redundancies in place that are supposed to make this more difficult. We're also seeing that some of this filtering's not happening nearly as much. Filtering, blocking, what they let people know about. So again, a lot is happening. But what's really cool is one of the Anons came up with all sorts of awesome information here. Visiting Turkey, Egypt, France, South Korea. And oddly, as these things were happening, that's as Trump was going to all these places and meeting all the new rulers after he got voted in, right? After the election had happened, and then that time in between where the transfer starts to happen, and he's busy flying around the world, meeting all the leaders, saying, hey, I'm the new president. This whole thing, and I'm sure that's exactly how it plays out, right? Oddly, there's this follower, Obama, shadowing everything, coming in with the, all right, well, I know what Trump said. Here's what's really going on. From day one, there was always a plan to get us to try to take over the planet. This was always the plan. The timing of it, I think, is tied into some other stuff that's going to be even weirder than this Q stuff. So let's just try to keep it there. But there seems to be a time frame that is a little more on the God scale that is, I think, coming into play, and I think they're well aware of that. And this timing, this crunch, we got to get control now, or we'll never be able to do it. So all of this stuff played out. Post 4156, COVID-19 hard push, lockdown extend in swing states. California, New York leading, of course, the Democrat-controlled, right? So what's going to happen is we're going to see if this is the virus or if this is about the election. One of the things that Trump has done to counter their movement is to open things earlier than expected. The hope was to get us into August when we would consider opening. And then at that point, well, you'd have to mail because it's scary and dangerous. But the problem is we're probably going to have a whole summer of good numbers of people not getting sick, people not dying as much. And when that happens, when we've got actual data and the most of us start to look at that data and say, I don't think it's as bad as they say, then this whole concept of mail-in votes will not matter. But the push is on, or the heat is on, or whatever. And there's a giant push right now for mail-in ballots. Oh, look at this. Governor Newsom of my wonderful state signs an order to send mail-in ballots to all registered voters in California for the November election. Now, one of the key things that Q has talked about before in the past is California is a marker. Let's see what California does. California is starting to do what everybody knew California was going to do. The question now is going to be, where's the legality in it? The push for the Senate. Trump's managed to put all sorts of judges in place in all sorts of different circuit courts. And so maybe once this gets bumped up to whatever, the Supreme Court of the state, I guess, because it's probably a state policy to a large extent, but we'll see how it plays out. Long story short, there's a huge push for this. The time is running out for these guys, and they're pushing hard to get moving now. 4157, Twitter with the Ingram angle saying pretty much the same information. We lost 100,000, no shutdown. This was in 1968. This was the 1968 H3N2 virus, the pandemic influenza, from the CDC, from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The 1968 pandemic happened, and there was roughly 1 million people killed worldwide and 100,000 people killed in the United States. This was back in 1960 numbers, folks. 1973, I think the world finally crossed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 3 billion, 4 billion, somewhere around there, right? We're at 7, 8 billion now. 100,000 relative to that population size, and we don't even have those numbers yet. Again, very interesting that we didn't shut down the entire world when that happened, yet for some reason, it's so contagious. Well, so was that flu. And in fact, that flu, per this thing, it's still running around. They say it still shows up from year to year. I forget where I saw that, but anywho, it's in there somewhere. Shadow presidency, shadow government, insurgency, irregular warfare. This was all planned from the get-go. The second that they realized, oh my God, Hillary lost, everything went into overdrive. Got to get this taken care of. Started spinning up stories, started getting the machine going. All these people started staying up late trying to come up with crazy ways that they could keep Trump busy, tied up, wrapped up, twisted up, and hopefully eventually even put out of office. This is exactly what a coup is. Got some more information here from this post. This post, is this the one that they referenced? No, it's not. What? Ooh, let's get it back here. Let's try to get these right. So here's a whole bunch of PDFs. Now, oddly, I don't know if these work or not. This was a site that eventually he posted this. He was okay. So first off, he's saying, all right, treasure trove of information. So this was the releasing of PDFs of all the transcribed interviews from the House Intelligence Committee. Apparently there's something up with this, or there's something up with Q posting it. Whatever the case is, 4159 leads to, obviously the link I showed, leads to 4160. We can help once you hit a target. It must be open source. Happy hunting. Q's now saying, all right, I just gave you a treasure trove of information. I kind of know what I'm looking for. I need you guys to go dig for it. And when you do, talk to me, and I'll let you know if you're on the right track. Now, this was, what, 157.44. Now, shortly after, was it 14 minutes to make me do the math real quick? Disregard, insertion removed. Taking it back. And so this upset a few people. The one post that really jumped out at me. Damn, we were used as bait again. And yeah. There are times where they're doing certain things to see where communications go. They have electronic communication. They can sniff the relation to this. Someone shot this link to somebody else and said, close this down. They can see that. That's what they were looking for. A lot of the things that get posted on this site are meant for the deep state to find and freak out about. So understand, we're working together. There is a plan, and we're all doing the best we can to, one, provide the information we can provide. Two, there's a lot of things, like we've said, that we can't provide, right? We don't know. We don't know what's going on, because if we actually knew, it would cause all sorts of problems and or wars. But what they're trying to do is awaken the public, trap the bad people. They're just creating this giant honeypot almost. It's pretty cool how it plays out. Post 4162. Oh, there's a new Q post. We'll check that out when we get there. Hopefully it doesn't go crazy on all these. It's going to make all sorts of noise, though. So again, this is another interesting one. So this Adam Intus, or however you say that, really has, heck, didn't AEWP mention it when we gave him the tape? Not AE, but someone else there, not sure who, wasn't listening. He's saying, not important yet, but they're giving us hints. This is for the Anons. Again, a lot of awesome stuff for the Anons. Think leak investigation. Again, they're trying to figure out where the leaks are. This is super important. I think we're down to 2, 3, 4 people maybe, and probably in different areas. Maybe it's more, but there's a couple different key ones that are close to the president, and they're the ones that are almost completely outed. Every time they put out some sort of information, it's usually unique. They usually have an idea who the person is, and then they watch. It's kind of like when they're looking for a disease in the body, and they put like a radioactive iodine or something crazy, right? And it goes to like your thyroid, or it goes to certain places, so they can see it with a scan. That's basically how this is playing out as well. So think Horowitz mid-year FBI media assets. We identified numerous FBI employees at all levels of the organization with no official reason to be in contact with the media, who were, nevertheless, in frequent contact with reporters. Some of those media contacts were social in nature too, including drinks and meals after work, going to sporting events, and playing golf. Think WL, HRC Podesta media assets list. They always, brackets in bold, use the same contacts. They have to. These contacts are very, very unique. They take time to develop these contacts and know who they can trust and who they can't. Like someone like me, they're not going to just approach me, because most likely they're not going to be able to trust me. MSM assets complicit? Knowingly, yes. And that is one of the things that is going to come out, is how from the top levels of the mainstream media, this type of information is controlled. It's not as obvious as some people would say, and we'll cover more of that. I used to work in radio. Like, I've actually been there, and we don't have like meetings where they're like, all right, here's what you're going to talk about. Wasn't quite that obvious, but you knew what you weren't supposed to talk about. What media assets are farm-born? C.N. Cooper, which means just basically raised to do this. Like, whatever the case was, he was probably identified at an early age at being perfect. He was good looking. He was able to communicate well, probably tested reasonably high on certain things, whatever the case was. And bam, he was taken into the farm, CIA. And when that happens, and when he's pushed out to CNN to sort of do his job, again, it's very interesting how people are being outed for what they actually are. The truth is coming out. People are awakening. 4164, what farm-born assets elected to Congress? What farm-born assets are attempting to get elected to Congress? What is the primary party to which they serve? It's always the Democrats, right? How do you control your own budget? How do you control agency regs? How do you control your own destiny? Loss of control, define shadow government. Let's check out this link here. Now, one of the most famous shadow government people of all time is the Bush family. Really, a lot of people forget about Granddaddy Bush, which was Prescott Bush, who funded both sides of the World War II, the Nazis and the United States. Figured one side's going to win, and I'm going to make sure I'm on that side too. Again, these people brought over all the Nazis for the rocket making and all their crazy technology that they were aware of, the ships, the Foo Fighters, a lot of interesting stuff. Bush was always in the middle of it. Vice President of Reagan, served his one term. The guy was still in charge until the day he died. In fact, the day he died, supposedly a lot of things finally relaxed because of the loyalty or fear of this man. So, again, shadow government has existed for a long time, certainly going back into the 50s, but way likely well past that. Post 4165, another great link here. Let's check this guy out. The Week. Outed CIA agent Valerie Plame is running for Congress, and her launch video looks like a spy trailer. It's actually super cool. It's on YouTube, so I don't really want to play it. I can put the link below, but yeah, this lady, and on top of that, she's smoking hot, and she's driving this car all crazy, and then she gets out, and she's still smoking hot, and she's like, yeah, and the CIA taught me, and Trump, I'm coming after you, and she's got this pretty smile, and it's a great video, and, you know, good on you for it, but she admits that she's a CIA person. Do we really want the CIA and the government? Do we? I think that's kind of what we're trying to get away from. I don't know, just saying. Post 4166, 99% of men and women at the CIA serve with distinction. Patriots, absolutely. 1% suck. 99% FBI, awesome. 99% DOJ, awesome. 99% NSA, awesome. That 1%ers, man, we've been talking about them for a while. Reminds me of that the Wall Street thing, right, where everyone was doing that. So the point is that there's a lot of great men and women that serve in these agencies. These agencies themselves aren't necessarily tarnished, but there are some very bad apples that must fall. These apples must be removed from the bunch, or it will spoil the bunch, and that is what has happened. So hopefully, and I would say be mindful, and certainly patriots, be on the lookout for this not happening, but it is, I believe, and then this is what we will see as time starts to play out. These 1% are being outed. They are outing themselves. They are showing themselves. They are announcing publicly lies that we're catching them in. Things are happening. This is the picture I started with, which where we go one, we go all. This is all about helping each other. And that's really kind of, if you get the feeling of what's going on, the 99% of us, let's help, okay? That 1% sucks. We're going to get them out of the way. Let's help each other. Even Democrats. Almost my entire family is hardcore Democrats and thinks I am crazy for the views I hold. And probably right in some degrees. But I totally don't agree with what they're talking about, nor do I agree with controlling people. So again, let's help one another. Yes. Let's try to offer more freedoms. Yes. Now, this is a great little thing here. Listen carefully, they tell us. This one's actually fun. This is a minute 40, and this is President Obama talking about a private call where the rule of law is at risk because of this Michael Flynn thing, where we just start letting people take away their guilty pleas willy-nilly and saying they're not guilty when they didn't. They're going to let them lie. Oh, my God. The rule of law is at risk. But then again, you could have people like Hillary who broke every single law there was with that email server, or even get into some of the horrible things that happened around Benghazi. And that's okay, right? That rule of law, that's all right. Smashing the cell phone into pieces when the government wants to see it. I mean, that kind of rule of law is okay. That's all right to risk that. But, no. If you actually gave a guilty plea and you weren't actually guilty, but yet you were coerced into saying you were guilty, well, hell no, you should never be able to change that.
The degree to which the news over the last 24 hours, I think, has been somewhat downplayed about the Justice Department dropping charges against Michael Flynn. And the fact that there is no precedent that anybody can find for someone who's been charged with perjury. Just getting off scot-free. That's the kind of stuff where you begin to get worried that basic, not just institutional norms, but our basic understanding of rule of law is at risk. And when you start moving in those directions, it can accelerate pretty quickly, as we've seen in other places.
So basically, yeah, when you start moving in the direction of truth and you start unraveling that one thread on that old-ass horrible sweater and you start realizing it's just coming out completely, yeah, it can go pretty quick, can't it, Mr. Barry Obama there? Yeah, sorry, buddy, it's not going to work out real good for you. But again, yeah, he's not happy about this. They are out in full force. All the key players, all the assets, as they say, are out there. And that's also some of what they mean by that, is we've even got Obama out there now chatting it up with people. Is it about the virus or the election? I think that's the question that seems to be getting hit home quite a bit on this, and I think that's very interesting. I got this queued up, and I just want you guys to know, I had to watch a bunch of this horrible video just to get to this spot that I think is relevant for you. So I took one for the team, but let's check it out.
Questions now about voting this fall, particularly, I think, brought into relief by what we've seen happen in other places in Wisconsin. The last CARES Act, not the 3.5 one, the sort of supplemental for the PPP, but the act before that, the big one, it had, money for mail-in voting, but there's no sort of federal requirement that states prepare themselves. It's a very spotty system. Is that a must-have for Democrats? Is that something that is a kind of like a bright line for Democrats as a priority to make sure we can have a safe and healthy election?
It is really important. I don't underestimate the desire of Republicans to use the COVID crisis to prevent people from voting, particularly poor people, people of color. They've done that all along. Here's a good one. In Alabama, if you want to vote by absentee ballot, you have to have a notary public sign that you did it. Now, who can afford a notary public? Not a poor dirt farmer in Alabama, not a inner city resident in Alabama. It's aimed at stopping people of color and poor people from voting. We feel extremely strongly that everyone should be able to vote, that the COVID crisis should not stand in the way of what is the hallmark, the wellspring of America, which is free, fair, and open elections. And that will be a very important part of the legislation that we're going to put forward.
So obviously, he is completely talking about the entire plan that the deep state has. And that has been the deep state's plan all along, is to try to keep us locked inside our houses long enough to get the election done to a mail-in ballot. So it is super easy to manipulate, take advantage of, steal. And that is their last desperation. That is the quarterback going back. He's in the end zone of his end zone, and he's just chucking the Hail Mary pass and praying to God somebody actually gets it. But guess what? It ain't going to happen.
We're going to fight like
it ain't going to happen. Now, I just, for fun, I was like, wow, like what's a dictator? Because I'm kind of frustrated with all the people that seem to want to tell me what I'm allowed to do and not allowed to do versus patriots that seem to be very freedom loving. Like, hey, as long as you're not, doing it on my yard, I'm like, I'm fine. I don't really care what you do in your own thing. So anyway, dictator, it's a ruler with total power over a country, typically one who has obtained control by force. A person who behaves in an autocratic way. In ancient Rome, a chief magistrate with absolute power appointed in an emergency. And then it made me see this, I was like, all right, well, what is an example of a dictator? Well, dictatorship is about total power. However, a dictator doesn't call themselves a dictator. No, it's kind of a derogatory term. You don't say, hey, I'm a tyrant, I'm a horrible person, unless you're Obama and then you call yourself a renegade, whatever. They might be a president, prime minister, king, or parliament. However, this person or small group has complete rule over the country. For example, when a military dictatorship junta takes over a country. Okay, well, that's what you expect, right, when you think of a standard dictator. Let's see, ruler often arises power out of conflict. You mean like a pandemic, maybe? That might be sort of a conflict. That'd be interesting. Or maybe like total racial divide or sex divide or sort of ism divide that exists today. It's just a thought. Dictators control all branches of government and media. You mean like the Democrat Party? Wow, that's weird. That's just probably total coincidence at this point. I'm sure. I'm sure it's coincidence. Intimidation, murder, imprisonment, violence, and other human right abuses used to control the population. So that kind of sounds like the militia groups that are out there, the Antifa and stuff, which generally are sort of left-leaning. They say they're right. I don't know, but it's not typically in line with right. But certainly people that are willing to, put you in jail for opening up your salon, as an example. And a cult of personality makes their ruler appear divine. So, I don't know, like Gavin Nunes just popped into my head. A very, very well-spoken, very good-looking gentleman. Just carries himself, always smiling, because he's always, he's always walking on the souls of children. So, of course, he's a happy man. But again, just curious, just thought I'd bring it up. 4170. Got the Hillary Clinton. Is this, again, about the virus or the election? Oh, look, Hillary's jumping on the bandwagon. I hope other governors around the country follow Gavin Newsom's lead. No voter should be forced to choose between their safety and exercising their civic duty this fall. Yet, I can go into a grocery store. Yet, I can go into a 7-Eleven. And all I got to do is put on a mask and just stay 6 feet away from people. Are you telling me we can't do that in a voter place when the little booths aren't even that close to each other anyway, but you could certainly put them even further apart and still allow people to go in and do their civic duty? They have all day long to do it. In fact, I think they've even talked about making it a holiday so you can take the day off. I don't know, just throwing stuff out there, just seeing if it sticks. 4171, the origin country of COVID-19, China. The origin country of COVID-19, Wuhan, actually city, I guess, if I can read correctly. How long was Wuhan on lockdown? Interesting, 76 days. So the worst of it, 76 days. How long was the remainder of China on lockdown? China extended their little New Year thing from January 24th to February 9th, which was 16 days. There's a little briefing here, and we'll pull that up in a second. How long has the U.S. been on lockdown? Seriously, it's 7-8 weeks now? Long time. No spread of COVID-19 outside of Wuhan? It went everywhere, right? How is it possible that the source country of the virus, minus Wuhan, was on lockdown for only 16 days? So we got like 1 billion people in a country that accidentally released it. They shut down the one city that was really bad, which I still wonder if that is tied to the new Wi-Fi stuff that they're putting out, right? Anyway, just saying. How long has this been on lockdown? Forecasted lockdown for California, New York, Oregon, Michigan. How long is that? They're wanting to put it out into August, July, right? Crazy. So we're trying to reconcile this information, trying to give facts. And even from the country where it originated, best I can tell, February 9th, Jiangxi province in the Shandong, February 13th for the Hubei, I'm not really even good, the Anhui, February 9th, February 9th, 17th to the 24th, that's about the longest one I see there for the Guangdong. I don't speak Chinese at all, obviously. Xie, very little anyways. How about that? That's about as close to Chinese as I even attempt to get, and I probably even said that wrong. But, again, a lot of information is coming out. A lot of us need to question what's going on. Question what we're being told. Question it. I'm not saying do crazy stuff, by no means, but if there's a time to go out and do a peaceful demonstration, then that may be the thing to do at that time. But be mindful, see what's going on. Anons, I ask each and every one of you guys to dig into some of these crazy drops, the releasing of these transcripts, and see what stuff is in there. We're leaning heavily on all you guys. You guys are amazing, and the work you do is fantastic. If you guys like what I've done so far, please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, put the little bell icon, and you'll notice when I have new videos coming out. Appreciate each and every one of you. God bless you all, and where we go one, we go all. It's On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.